So if I formally open the meeting, so welcome to the meeting of the Pension Fund Board. Can I check that everyone in the room and online can hear the meeting? We're using an owl today in the room, so it might be a bit different from the way we're used to working, but it should pick us all up. But if anyone online can let us know if they're having trouble hearing, and we'll speak more loudly. So the agenda pack for this meeting is available via MonteGov, or directly from the council website. And when I invite someone to speak, could you clearly state who you are for the benefit of anyone who's listening to the meeting, so you can identify who's speaking. I'm not sure whether we have any members of the public, but if there are any members of the public, thank you and you're welcome. And the meeting is being recorded and will be made available to view online. And what I'll try and do, and I can ask everyone else here to do as well, could I request that we refer to page numbers from the agenda pack to assist everyone in the information. Okay, so the first item on our agenda is apologies for absence. Debbie, do we have any apologies? No. Good. And I know we already have on record declarations of members' interest, and it's mainly to do with if you're a member or recipient of the local government pension scheme. Are there any declarations of interest that we should be aware of in addition to those already declared interests? No, thank you. And therefore our next item on the agenda is the minutes from our previous meeting, which was on the 12th of April. And I've had a look at that. I couldn't see anything that needed correcting, but if we just flick through page by page, just to make sure that there's nothing that we've missed or needed correcting. So in our last meeting, we had a question from Sigurd. We then, as is usual, we went through what the previous pension committee had gone through. So Anton gave us a roundup of what they've done. And we always try and do that a little bit after the last committee meeting, just so we're aware of what happens. I normally try and attend that, at least online. And we also are benefiting from having Simon in the room as well. So, so we can feed between us what goes on at the committee and what goes on at the board. And then we had our usual look at the risk register. And we had a look at the business plan, so we can decide what we're going to cover in future meetings. And in our last meeting, we looked at the administration strategy, and then we took that offline because Rachel met with Peninsula to talk about the administration strategy. Rachel, would you like to tell us what went on in that intervening time?
So we met a number of other members of the board, also met with Shirley and Rachel from Peninsula Pensions. Very productive meeting, had quite a long discussion, and following that, part of that, as a result of that, Rachel agreed to go away and make clearer the process that would go through before charges were made, so that it wasn't just you get it wrong, it gets done sort of thing. process. Subsequently, Rachel provided an amendment to the strategy, which I'm happy with. As I said, further was no charges at all, but I'm happy, much happier with, so I'm comfortable with that.
Good.
Hopefully, people in that meeting also.
That's great, and I understand, Simon, that last week that was then signed off by the committee.
Yes, correct.
It was, good, fantastic, well, thank you for that work, Rachel, that's great. That's great. Okay, so I'm happy that those minutes accurately reflect, our last meeting, so at some point I will sign them. I understand there's a bit of a problem with the print room at the moment. So I don't have a physical copy that I can sign this time, but at some point, I'm sure Debbie will make sure that I sign those minutes, as an accurate record of what we did last time. So therefore, we'll move to the next item on our agenda. Now, I don't understand that we've got any questions from the public. I don't think we've received anything.
No,
Unusually, we don't have any questions from the public.
Sigurd's gone all quiet on us. He wasn't around last week either, so perhaps he's on leave or something.
It might be on holiday, might be, yes, maybe. So we'll look forward to a question from Sigurd maybe next meeting. So now we come to agenda item 5, our review of only last week's pension fund committee meeting. So Anton, as you usually do, you give us a nice roundup of a 2-hour meeting in about 15 minutes. So let's see if we can break that record this time.
No attempts at records. So as usual, we started with the review of investment performance, which is a goodly long paper. But as usual, I confined my remarks to the combined fund, which starts on page 29 of their papers. A healthy return for the quarter. 5.6%, also a healthy return for the financial year to the end of March, year end of 13.1%. Both figures in excess of our benchmark, so that's nice as well. Looking at the graph on page 31, we're sort of just about ahead of the 4.6% absolute return target, which matches the return embedded in the actuaries' triangle valuation for this cycle.
And can I just interrupt you, Anton, just as a learning point? So the reason we've got that benchmark is so that we achieve fully funding by our target date. Is that the idea?
So I'll take a stage back.
Okay.
The reason we have an absolute return target
Yes.
is actually because SIPA, in their wisdom about 10 years ago, said it would be best practice for us to all to have a absolute return target as well as a relative to sort of markets target. So that's why we have the target.
Yes.
Now, having got the target, it seems wise, sensible to match it to the target, to the assumed return embedded in the actuaries' numbers. So
Okay.
it doesn't have to be aligned.
Yes.
We choose to have it aligned
Yes.
because it's possibly the most useful and significant number we have to choose a random number from.
Okay. Okay.
Well, why would you have it as anything else?
Yeah.
It's the point. And yes, if all other things in the actuaries, all other assumptions in the actuaries calculations prove to be perfectly accurate,
Yes.
then that is the number we require to be fully funded at the point in the future that they were looking at that time. Bearing in mind that each valuation is a discrete exercise.
Yes.
And then they'll have a different number at the
Yes.
next valuation, although it tends not to be massively different.
And the next valuations next year, I agree.
The next valuation is as at the 31st of March 2025, but it usually takes at least 9 months to get the first draft of the results. And because on one occasion the government changed the goalposts in March, actuaries tend not to give us the formal sign
Yes,
until usually a day or two before the end of the financial year. Because
Yeah.
it just saves them doing something that the government then shifts the goalpost and they have to reissue everything to everyone's disappointment.
so,
So the 4.6%, all other things being equal, should be.
Yes.
But of course, there are a number of important assumptions embedded in the actuary's calculation.
yes,
And typically, none of them is perfectly accurate.
so would there,
So,
would there
yeah, there's.
come a point where we are fully funded, where that number comes down? Would we
No.
expect that number to come down?
No, not necessarily. So it's the number that's chosen by the actuary to do their calculations.
Yes,
So it creates what our funding level is.
yes,
But it's not a product of.
okay, okay,
So it's irrelevant to that number, at least in theory,
yes,
as to what the funding level is. Now, whether if you got to a nirvana of being nicely overfunded,
150% funded,
100%.
as Scotland is.
I don't think it's quite 150.
147.
Then you might have a conversation with the actuary of building more prudence into their assumptions
Yes,
and agreeing with them to target a slightly lower figure because the maths work. But typically, as I say, logically, you work out what it should be and then you just get the funding out the other side.
okay.
So in theory, it shouldn't change.
So we are probably looking at a benchmark of 4.6 for the foreseeable future.
No, it will, I would expect it to change post the
Valuation.
valuation. But it's likely to change from 4.6 to somewhere between, I would guess, if I said sort of 4.25 and 5
Yes,
as a sort of range.
yes,
So I expect it to change, but not massively.
okay, so that, when we come, because this is all building to, when we come to our investment strategy statement, that's the level of return that the asset mix that we end up with should be aiming towards. Is my idea right?
No,
Oh, damn it.
because the way the actuary constructs that 4.6 is to take our strategic asset allocation.
Yes,
Apply a discount rate to each of the asset types within it, and then blend it to get that number.
so they're working in reverse of my idea then.
Yes,
They're looking at what assets we have.
and saying what they think is a reasonable long-term return
Yes,
for those assets.
okay,
So
so,
if we change the asset mix, if we went 100% UK government gilts,
yes,
as an example,
yes,
then they would change the discount rate, their investment return assumption, to the number that they use for just that type of asset. So there is a cause and effect there. One of the
Okay.
things that we will talk about as we drive that.
Yes.
With that strategic asset allocation is the impacts of that, and one of the impacts is that it will affect our
yes,
discount rate
yes,
and therefore affect what employers have to pay it.
Yes, exactly, because that,
Which is one of the reasons why I might suggest that we don't want to
think with it too far.
go radical.
Go radical. We don't want to go for gilts and we don't want to have entire private equity.
No.
Yeah. Okay, good. I've learned a bit. Great. So I interrupted you. Sorry.
That's right, no, that's fine. And I suppose the other thing I just sort of touched upon is, we're nearly now at the end of the next quarter. And they shine, aren't they shine?
Doesn't time fly when you're having fun?
Oh, yes. And returns are sort of not going anywhere fast.
Okay,
There's vast amounts of uncertainty, both
yes,
economic and political,
yes,
around the world. And markets do not like uncertainty.
no,
And so they don't seem to be going anywhere in particular. You get significant down months, you get significant up months. But especially since March, we've had quite significant swings in the market. And I think the overall sort of outcome is going to be a small positive, say 0.5% to 1%. So we might just sort of track, hopefully, that requirement for the final year of this valuation cycle, but I certainly don't think we should get excited that we're going to massively outperform it, and there's definitely risks that we might end up having another market wobble and significantly underperforming it. And actually, it's probably fair to say that the biggest single known risk, because actually the biggest risk is China walking into Taiwan,
Yes.
something like that. But the more likely biggest risk is the American election, but probably not in the context you think. What markets like is for Congress and the president to be split, and therefore somewhat silently with actually doing anything particularly noticeable.
okay, so
So they would be markets.
reining both of those people in.
Yes.
if you like, yes,
Markets would be more spooked by
it all being Republican or all being
Democrat.
Democrat, right,
than it being effectively
one another.
a bit
Yes.
of one another.
Yeah, and,
But
and
we'll,
And another learning point there. So the way that you talked about swings in markets, and the way that we mitigate some of those risks, that volatility, is by diversifying our portfolio. So we've talked about the idea of, markets going from one to another, and one thing performing well or another asset class performing well. So that's why we're going to build up a blend of assets, some that are less risky, some that are more risky, but also geographical blend within limits. So we've got lots of different types of investments within our holdings.
yes, within reason.
Yes.
Because despite what some consultants will try and persuade you, I would argue there's probably only 8 or 9 genuinely different assets.
Yes, yes. And when we're looking at our investment strategy, when we're picking and choosing between portfolios at Brunel, do we have any indication of overlap? So if we chose, 3 different portfolios from Brunel, would we have visibility on our overall holding within a particular company, within a particular country? Because there probably is overlap in holdings between the different Brunel portfolios, or am I wrong?
The overlap is, it slightly depends on what portfolios you pick. but most of them are relatively discrete. So there are three, we'll say three, global equity portfolios where there is an obvious.
So we wouldn't choose
Well,
those three.
well, no, we have two of them.
Okay, okay,
Because one's passive and one's active. So
Right.
there's something that's different about it.
yes. So
But then there's a
Hang on,
there's a
another
rather
learning point.
explicit overlap.
another learning point. Is everyone on the board aware of the difference between passive and active?
And with,
You're not on the board. Is everyone on the board aware of the difference between passive and active?
Could you perhaps explain it to me?
Shall we both, shall we try?
um,
It's the way that the portfolio is managed. And it's the way that the investment manager will buy and sell stocks. If they are an active investment manager, they are going to be making clever choices, we hope, and choosing what to invest in. If it's a passively managed fund, tends to be cheaper because it's a big computer algorithm that tracks a particular benchmark. And that benchmark could be a stock market like the FTSE 100 index, or it could be a MCSI, it could be a global investment manager that produces an index. So either they will directly buy all of the stocks on a particular index, or they'll again budget a bit and buy 80% of the stocks and sort of mimic what a particular index is doing. Is that right, Anton?
good enough government work.
Good, right.
So once you get beyond that global flow, so there's a specific UK equity portfolio and that will have some overlap with the global. But
Because the UK equity market
it's part
is
of,
full of global companies.
well, no, actually not that. It's
Okay.
because the global index includes
The UK,
companies, includes the UK.
yeah,
But then the small cap and the emerging market portfolios are typically, so on a benchmark basis, are completely separated,
another learning point.
but
Does
there
everyone
is-
know what small cap means?
just smaller companies.
Capitalization, so it's how much money is in that. This is
The-
gonna turn into a tutorial.
The market capitalisation is the price per share times the number of shares. in it.
Yes. So, Microsoft, huge capitalization.
Currently, as of this morning, I
Yes.
gather, no, bigger again.
Bigger again.
The Nvidia this today I read, but maybe not tomorrow. So with those portfolios, they are distinct. Although, because the managers are allowed a little bit of off benchmark sort of
Yes.
exposure,
Yes.
there is a slight risk of bleed, but not a lot. And then on the bond side, they're all.
Hang on, benchmarking. Okay, so when we're looking at the benchmark of a particular portfolio, if it is passively managed, we should expect no variance between the benchmark and the performance, because the benchmark is the index. With an actively managed portfolio, we're always aiming for them to outperform the benchmark, because that's what we're paying for, because we are paying more for actively managed funds. So they should be outperforming the benchmark. Otherwise, why are we paying them more money to not perform as well as an index? We might as well just have a passively managed fund.
You say that, should you them to buy gilts? You don't judge what you've got.
No, because we not want some risk.
We can have that debate.
Yes. Yes.
Because otherwise we will be here. So, and on the bond side, there would be no overlap. And, on the private market side, there would be no overlap.
Yes.
Um,
Property holdings no overlap.
Private market, property I'll be included in private market.
Okay,
So then moving on, I did just draw attention also then to, that we did have a bit of a reorganisation during the quarter to March. We largely speaking moved some money from, bonds into, from equity into bonds.
okay,
That's because our weighting in bonds have got very, very low just as markets move.
yeah.
And equities have got higher, so we were just squeezing it back towards.
Okay, so bonds are traditionally lower risk than equities, because what we're buying with a bond is we are loaning money to a company or a government, if it's gilt. And what that company or government is saying is, we will pay you a fixed interest return on that loan. So it's not the value of the stock market going up and down, but there's also trading on the bond market. So your bond has a value, as well as the interest, the coupon that you're getting back on that bond. That bond itself can be traded. So the bond market. So if interest rates are in the environment are running at 5%, and your bond is only paying you a coupon of 4.25%, then it's not worth as much as general interest rates, so it's going to lose value. Okay, I'll try and limit my tutorials there.
And then just finishing with the actuaries update, showing that we're estimated to be about 91% funded at the moment, which is slightly lower than the 95% at the last valuation. I'm just going to diversify. I didn't last week, but I'll diversify for a second here on that funding level. There's a lot of noise around at the moment around the local government pension scheme being fully funded.
Yes.
Isn't this
We
fantastic?
heard that last week, didn't we?
It's Pension actually,
Of course.
because they each calculate things in a different way, and Barnett-Waddingham's method is less dependent on gilt yields and more stable through time
Okay,
than that of Hyman's. It's the typical sort of other one. And because Hyman's methodology is much more dependent on gilt yields, and with gilt yields being higher, so therefore the anticipated return on gilts being higher than it was 2-3 years ago, that gives them a much higher funding level. What gilt yields give us, they also take us away. So I'm quite happy with the more stable and consistent message we get from Barnett-Waddingham in that context. And yeah, we'll just plod away and maybe get fully funded one there.
yeah, yeah.
Any questions on that before I move on to passing over to Shirley, because it's the administration performance update?
So gilts are just a special form of bond, government gilts. They had a bit of gold around the edge, they were gilt edged, that's why they're called gilts. So when we're talking about,
Only in the UK, it's only
Okay.
UK government bonds that are referred to as gilts.
it's nice to know we're special. So when we're talking about the yield on a bond, that's the value of the bond and also the coupon, the interest, fixed interest return that we're getting. So you can look at yield curves, and that can give you some idea of the overall economy of whether people think interest rates are going to go up in the future or they're going to go down. So is it worth holding on to this bond, or are interest rates in the prevailing economy going to be higher than the 4.25 that I happen to have purchased on this bond? Okay, I think we can go to Shirley now. I had the pleasure of meeting Shirley face to face at the conference last week, so that was really lovely, Shirley.
No, it's nice
Hi.
to meet you too. Hi. Yeah, it's very interesting conference,
Oh.
isn't it?
Oh, you're on mute.
No, I don't think she is on.
Oh,
I don't
is it
think
not
we can-
working?
Just bear with.
Do you want me to speak?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay. Yes, it was nice to meet you too, Anne, last week at my first conference for the PLSA, which I found very interesting. But we're here just to go over a little bit about the report we delivered to the committee last week, which the report is providing information for the quarter January 24 to the end of March 24, as well as for the full 23-24 financial year. The overall performance was 91%. However, the committee picked up that the low priority was at 72% and asked if we had a plan to improve it. The answer to that is yes. And we have within that quarter had new staff and apprentices join, and they have been trained up on frozen refunds and interfunds that you can see from the report are at the lower end of the percentage in target. And they have also picked up amalgamations, which sit within the medium priorities, but is also underperforming at the moment. We have, during this period of time, when they're being trained, there's also a check-in element which affects the time frames that are involved in this type of work. And obviously as the staff become more proficient in the work and they become faster, and we're happy that they're actually completing work to the high standard, then the check-in element lessens as we go on to a different type of check-in. We don't check every case once we are happy that they are at a good standard, and that will all improve things as we go forward. This work, as with all our work, is very much on our agenda. Every month we look at it to see how the team are doing and whether there's any additional impacts that may affect the type of work we should make sure we do. But what we're all trying to do is make sure that we are completing work in a good time scale, ready for the pension dashboard as well, because that will be imperative that we have good clean data and records up to date going forward. The report also provided a brief update regarding both McLeod and cybersecurity. The committee asked for more detail on both. With McLeod, we will provide in more detailed progress and our plans to make sure that we meet the implementation dates and the national issues that are around McLeod at the next committee meeting. With cybersecurity, there was additional conversations with regard to that as well. And I know it's on the agenda later today, but I don't know if Anton wanted to mention anything about that at this time.
Yes, so committee were very keen to have additional details, so we agreed that actually it'd probably be better to do a informal offline meeting. So that will take place when at some point I can get together with Rachel and Shirley, and we can work out the various people we need to come. We can actually work out a date, and then we will invite them. So we'll do that way. Because as much as anything, firstly, obviously, Shirley and I are not IT technicians. And so we need to get someone who is to explain it fully, because we don't really understand it. I hope I'm not doing you down there, Shirley. I certainly don't.
You're fine.
And also, the more you delve into it, the more likely you're actually going to start talking about the actual controls, which at some point might involve putting something in the public domain that weakens those controls. So clearly, probably best not to
Well, we can
have a public meeting.
have an offline meeting where we can all
Oh,
learn and ask all sorts of questions, and then the results of that can come back to the public meeting thing. Yeah,
well, I think we would probably just report that you were
that we
content.
had,
You had a meeting and you were hopefully content with the controls that
Yes.
were in place. Obviously, if you're not content with the controls that are in place, we'll have to deal with that.
Yes. I know Anthony was one who was particularly keen on that, and I know he's not here today, so he's online. Hi, sorry. So yes, we must make sure that those who are interested and informed in this area attend that meeting.
Yeah.
And then anyone else who wants to.
As many as is practical.
Yeah. Shirley, any more that you want to add?
No, I just thought I was going to open it up to yourselves to see if you wanted to discuss anything that the committee hadn't raised with us. Okay.
Nice background, Shirley.
Probably the
That's
same as a few others.
Yeah, that's not your actual home though, is it?
Unfortunately not, no.
Thank you, Shirley. I think we can move to the next agenda item, which is our business plan update.
No committee's business plan update.
Oh, sorry, committee's business plan update.
So as usual, I took the opportunity to just quickly talk about sort of government regulations and movements and everything. And funny enough, they've all sort of stopped.
Yeah.
So we're not expecting any regulatory updates now, I suppose, effectively until at least the autumn, if not later. And then we had a quick discussion about the business plan and everything. We will be doing that first learning session, building towards the strategic asset allocation, but due to the being an election period, which
And
may,
the holiday period.
and the holiday period, which tends to make people busy.
Yes.
We've agreed that we'll start that in September. I'll get some
Excellent.
over the next couple of weeks, I'll get some sort of dates out for you to sort of express whether you're free, et cetera,
And starting to form that training, I've got several topics that I would like to feed into our review of the investment strategy statement. So what's the best way of doing that?
I don't mind. I mean, in theory, because the nature of the process will be that there should be, unless you wish to discuss something that's really off field.
I don't think so.
It should naturally come up through the process.
Okay,
And obviously, if it doesn't, you can.
right, well, let's give you a heads up of the things that I think will feed into our asset mix. And I think it's risk, performance, carbon metrics, and fees. And I think those things together will help us choose between the portfolios that Brunel have on offer. What it might also do is flag up that Brunel don't have a portfolio that matches our needs. So I would also like to cover how would we as a board and committee feed into Brunel that we'd like a new portfolio according to this asset mix. So I'd like all of that to come into the training.
I'll cover that last one quickly. There is a process. It's called the CAP process, or create, amend, or delete a portfolio. but there is a asset size requirement.
Yes,
So if we ask for something that no one else wants, there is a possibility that we could pay through the nose for it as a elected service via Brunel.
yes. Is that what Cornwall's done with their place-based investment?
Sort of. I mean, but there is a flip side that in terms of meeting our investment requirements, a long-term return to help meet the cost of pensions, Brunel offer everything we might need.
Okay,
So it's only if we are looking for something that's weird for some reason,
yeah,
that we should need to go there. And from a cost benefit basis, I would advise against it.
well, that comes back to the fees, you see, so that's why I think we need, in our building up to our investment strategy statement, our asset mix, I think that's why we need to feed in risk, performance, carbon metrics, and the cost of doing that. And if we can find a good enough solution that ticks all of those boxes, or go 75% towards all of those boxes, then that's how we'll end up with our asset mix.
And I would always argue that you don't look at fees, you look at net fees and performance.
Okay, yeah, the cost of doing that, well, okay, but that, you're still looking at fees, but it's, yeah.
Yes, but without actually having a discussion about fees or looking at the size of fees, because I would look at the net of fees performance. And therefore, you don't actually have a conversation about whether this one's costing you 10 quid and that one 20 quid. Because the fact that it's twice as much is more than made up for in its performance.
Yes.
It's not.
So then there we're going back to the active passive thing, that if the active manager is earning their keep, yes.
Yeah, I mean, on that basis, as Anton has said, to all intents and purposes, Brunel already have a mix of funds which meet all our needs. Now, if we decide that we want to change our needs, then we would have to look for either another fund that Brunel have, or a fund elsewhere, or some other way of investing to get the type of investments we would wish.
Or Brunel are open to building a portfolio.
Entirely, but
Yeah.
the idea, my caution about asking Brunel to build a particular portfolio for us would be the sheer cost of that.
Yes.
I think the fees that they would require to build a specific portfolio for the Somerset Pension Fund would be, I suspect, too high for the type of return we'd like to get. Now, that could be me being completely off the wall, but I would suspect that as a generalisation, and I accept all generalisations are in line, but as a generalisation, Brunel's funds, they have a fund of just about everything we
Yes.
could possibly get.
Yes.
So, I mean, my starting point would be what other funds do they have, and do any of those
Yes,
closely match the
Yes.
new desire to
Yes.
have investment in this area or that area?
Yeah.
And I'm
I
very conscious about the localism
yes,
aspect of this.
yes,
I reiterate what I said. Brunel have all the portfolio that we need to meet our investment
Yes.
objectives. And I emphasise investment.
Yes.
If we start coming up with other objectives, then that's where it becomes more complicated.
Indeed, and potentially vastly more expensive.
excellent, right, so I fed in what I think we as a board, I won't speak for the committee, we as a board need in order to be able to intelligently come up with an investment strategy. Are any other board members with any requests for what you feel you need to know about in order to make a sensible decision about our investment strategy? Anything we've missed? We won't know some of it until we get there. There will be things that come up, I'm sure.
Also,
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. So that's, I think we've done the committee's business plan.
Yeah. So then the finance and membership statistics update, the membership statistics are there, are what they are. Happy to take questions on them. There isn't a finance update because we're still working on the year-end accounts.
Okay.
And obviously, for the year end, we would expect to produce the same numbers that are in the accounts. So we will pick that up when we present the annual report, including the accounts in September.
Excellent. So the committee's risk register, we're going to be looking at the risk register anyway.
Yeah, I don't think anything particularly,
Has changed.
no, that needs particularly mentioning at this stage. So then the administration strategy statement, and to cut a long story short,
It was signed off.
signed off.
it was, as mentioned earlier, it was signed off. So then moving on to the communication strategy statement.
Yes.
And I haven't put this on your agenda because I thought we'd just cover it here.
Okay, fine.
So, as discussed on a few occasions, we've vaguely promised a new communication policy statement. It is a requirement of the regulations that we have one. The first one was written quite a long time ago. I did say the date last week, and I can't remember now. Was it 2012? Was it 2015? And largely speaking, had only been tweaked since rather than revised. The proposed document that was included in the committee papers is a complete rewrite.
Okay.
So I did not take the old one and adjust it. I started with a blank piece of paper and started copying Devon's.
Okay, well done. Why reinvent the wheel? Yeah.
Well, and also, obviously, those elements of the comms that are delivered by Peninsula Pensions rather than by me and my team,
Yes,
obviously are the same
yes.
as Devon's, so why write a policy that's different? Now, obviously, as we go through the discussion, if we end up with something that's different, because the committee and board specifically want something different, that's fine, but I'm not going to start with something that's different. So that's sort of how we've got to the draft of the strategy as is. There were no comments from committee.
Was Mick Dunn there? Because
He's
I
got-
know,
He is on holiday. He did, as I mentioned at the meeting, he did send me an email which he requested that I share with you all, which I did.
is the aircon on there? It's hot.
There is no aircon.
There is no aircon, that's why I'm quite warm.
Yes,
Right.
we're a government entity, we don't do aircon in our offices.
Very green.
But I did make the point that his email was largely about the content of leaflets rather than the strategy,
Strategy.
which is
Okay.
whether to have the leaflets.
Okay,
So the fact that we will have an annual communication with scheme members was included in the strategy. Typically then, once the strategy is agreed, officers go and deliver the strategy.
Yes.
Tell you what we've delivered.
so how would we feed it in the strategy? How would we feed into the content? How would we make decisions about content?
Historically, across every facet of the fund,
Yes.
committee and board who make policy, officers deliver policy,
Okay,
and then you criticise in arrears.
okay, no, that's fine, so
Now-
that's how it works, right, okay.
That's formally how it works. If you want to send me emails about stuff, I'll consider them, but
Okay,
I make no promises.
so who will make decisions about content?
ultimately, I suspect that I will be the editor-in-chief, if
Okay.
not the scribe.
Okay, and will you have the support of any comms team in that? And if not, why not?
So I may have support in terms of the graphics. The content, no,
Yes,
because Somerset Council's comms team know
Nothing.
less than nothing about
about
it.
pension.
So
Right.
it would be asking, yeah, you might as well ask them to tell you about, yeah, do a leaflet on the workings of Hinkley Point.
Yes.
Its operation.
But there are organisations that we are members of that do have a comms team that know about pensions, for example, the local government pension scheme. So I'm wondering whether we can draw on that when we're producing our communications.
Well, I'm not born in a bubble, and I'm certainly not above, as previous comments show, pinching other people's stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
So my starting point would probably be, here are some blocks of content we want to deliver.
yes.
Has someone else already written something?
And can we borrow it or buy it from them? Yes.
I would tend to
Try
think,
not to steal, but, yeah.
I would check for a copyright label, but typically, so if it's something like the PLSA
Hmm.
or the Scheme Advisory Board or something like that, then I wouldn't need to check for a copyright
Yeah.
label because
We're a member.
we're a member.
Yeah.
And the reason they have produced it is with the intention of us using it.
Yes, yes.
I am aware of some material that was used in a Somerset Council presentation to staff. But again, I might magnify, but again, I'm pretty confident on the basis that Somerset Council paid for that,
That we could use it.
that we could use it. Looking at Rachel, she organised that. And therefore, and it was used freely in comms, and I think it was put on our internal staff website afterwards, or is available somewhere in the great morass of our intranet. So again,
Yeah,
so I think it very unlikely I would go down the route of paying for something, but very likely I'm going to go down the route of
Plagiarism.
plagiarism of some sort.
you go for more than one source, it's research. Simon,
I think going back to the, samples that were sent round by councillor Dunkel at his request, they showed, broadly speaking, the same things. And they were how close to clumsy are we, what is, how many members do we have, etc. And they are things that would be genuinely of interest to all members, new and old. I think
And typically, in terms of that sort of
format,
base information, the vast majority of that is actually in the annual report. So it's
yes, it's a question of drawing it together in that format.
and then putting it into something that's 1 or 2 pages long, I think that.
Yes. Yes, quite. For me, the useful bit of the suggestions that I think there were 4 organisations who sent a copy of, was how similar, but
yes,
and that they showed the same sort of information for everybody. And I see no reason to reinvent the wheel. And I think that Anton is more than capable of distilling a couple of pages out of 240 odd, with the basic information in it, which is already in the annual report anyway. So I think it's a good thing. I think it's something we should do.
yeah,
And we do communicate with every member at least once a year.
This is not a discussion about, we'll do one newsletter and then stop.
No.
So it's fine that it's an iterative process where we discover that there's some information that's worth either repeating or refreshing.
yeah,
and some things that maybe are say once and done for a period.
So does our comms policy look at engagement as well as having a policy that we will do stuff? Do we measure engagement? Do we try and improve engagement? Is that part of the comms policy? Is it our responsibility?
So beyond providing comms, I'm not sure what engagement you would do.
Okay.
So
For example, we can provide a newsletter, but if we don't look at, well, how many people have opened it? You know, what's the point?
Well, yes, but I suppose there's two answers to that. One is, I don't think we would have the means to track whether it is open or not, using that example. So I'm not sure how you would find out.
Well, that's why we need comms team input, because they would know. That's why we need comms team input, and that's.
That's a very crude measure, because just because somebody has opened the newsletter does not mean they read it,
No.
be understood.
No,
So
but there are measures out there that I don't know about, but the comms team will. So I'm thinking in our communications, in our communications policy, I would like some inclusion of engagement measures, and I would like some involvement, some budget towards funding some comms team input.
Can I ask a question?
Anthony's got his hand up, and then I'll come to you, Rod. Ant.
Hi guys, I'm just thinking aloud, how does this align to what this committee's objectives are? Because I'm just wondering what we were looking to get out of that comms engagement. So if we had lots of people reading newsletters, I mean, we're not here to make sure that people are well informed. So we're here to make sure that their pensions grow well and they give the maximum return, as I understood it.
But I think we do have, in our terms of reference, I do think we've got engagement in there.
Under the regulations, we are required to have a comms policy, and that is all it says. Under the regulations, we have no specific obligations under that comms policy. We could have a comms policy that says, other than as statutorily required, we're not going to do any comms. That would be a perfectly legal and valid comms policy. And we have absolutely no obligations to achieve anything specific from our comms policy. So it's what board and committee want to make it and want to achieve from it.
All I want to ask you, I presume it's a sort of user-friendly website to get some of the information that people want. But at the end of the moment, be mindful to get some better environmental newsletters. The information is going to be available, so the changes which may affect their pensions. Obviously, we're going to get a situation at some stage where we're probably going to have X number of extra pensioners as a result of the demographic changes. And it is useful to know exactly where we're coming from here. I don't think the idea of having a monthly newsletter or anything like that is just a question of changes ad hoc when certain things that may affect is an interest. But I do appreciate that perhaps it's not our role to necessarily, but I do think the information should be there. We're not going to advise them to make their own decisions as to what they want to do. I think they at least deserve to know what position is, because when people get older, they don't always look at things. It's rather working on the basis of being told, because they're not computer literate. So that would be my opinion.
And some of this engagement might be covered when the dashboard becomes available. I'm going to go to Rachel next.
I'm going to come back on Rob's. I
You
mean,
can.
one plan is currently annual, not monthly.
Let's add in this, oh, yeah.
The thing is with this is that for the person who is proactive and interested, all the information's out there. There is nothing else for us to provide. So that this is about making people more aware who are not making the effort, not that the information isn't there. I mean, between Peninsula's website, the annual reports, these committee and board papers, the LGA's website, the LGPS employers website, the Scheme Advisory Board website, everything that anyone would ever want to know is available.
And can I just ask the other thing was, bearing in mind what we were saying about IT literacy and things, if we wish to become contact minister, how available is it to actually contact them? Is it a sort of a service or 9 to 5, or is it just 5 or more? I've just mentioned this because if you know, it's like everything really, people can get on with things for a matter of urgency. And the thing is, sometimes with some organisations, you can't actually contact these people directly. It's 9 to 10 or whatever. I think there is like that. We have a sort of limited access.
Yes.
Yeah.
My recollection is 9 till 1. Is that correct, Shirley?
Hi, sorry, I couldn't quite hear the question, but
So-
I take it from yours, it was about phone lines.
Well,
So-
a phone, yes.
Yeah, that one. It's 8:30 to 1:30, I believe. Which the calls are monitored, and so with those we can see who hangs up if we don't get to it fast enough, and also what type of queries that are made within that phone line system. But we also get quite a lot of queries via the member self-service portal as well. They come direct from there.
So
That's I did like.
Sorry, Anne, do you want to come back?
So I was just going to say, I actually had to call Peninsula a few months ago, and I actually thought the service received was excellent, just as a bit of user feedback.
Thank you.
Lived experience, brilliant. Thanks, Anne. Going back to your original point, Anne, was, you know, is it our responsibility to look at engagement? I would say yes, but you might all disagree with me. Rachel, you had a point, didn't you?
Yeah, I'm trying to get my head around what we're trying to achieve here. So, as an employer representative on the board, I think employers have got a responsibility to help their staff and understand something, because that's in payment.
Yes.
You've then got deferred members and you've got pensioners, and I'm sure you've got other ones as well. And I think it's that different type of correspondence. I would say, as much as Anton has said that everything's available on the website, I don't disagree with that. Having done quite a lot of pensions engagement with staff over the last several months, the webinar that Anton referred to was attended by over 500 staff. That is a big attendance.
Yeah.
On the webinar.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting. At a very busy time, people really engaged, and we believe that engagement, and subsequently multiple people, whether it's the same one or others, I don't know, have looked at it accordingly. However, we are one employer, we are one, I represent the largest employer in the country, but there are a lot of people out there who are small employers,
Yeah.
whose members probably don't have that support or communication that I'm trying to put in. And I would say the majority of staff I talk to have very little understanding of their local government pension benefits.
Yeah.
Absolutely minimal. Even really senior, high earning, professional finance staff have very little understanding of that. So people you think would be engaged with
Yes.
don't have that understanding. and some basic stuff. You really need to start from the ground, yes, to move up, in my opinion, and start an induction when staff come in. But that isn't going to get to your small employer with 3 or 4 people. So that for me is where this board and the committee have more of a role, is actually engaging with every member.
Yes,
So, we don't know how to do that, and I think it's through Peninsula.
yes,
Personally, and then with their support and their materials and whatever. And you know, the staff at Peninsula are very knowledgeable and very supportive about
yeah,
what I try to do.
yeah,
And they'll sit on the calls and they'll answer
yes.
questions afterwards and all that sort of thing, and that's been really helpful. But to me, it needs to be a much
So-
wider divide.
So maybe in our communications policy, we need to talk about how we disseminate that engagement task to the employers. And how we assist the employers, the smaller employers who I represent on the pension board. And I at Springtown Council do an annual in-person tutorial about the local government pension scheme, and people come back year after year because their situation has changed, their finances have changed, and every time there are loads of questions that people ask, but every year that knowledge and understanding of the fantastic benefits that people have in a defined benefit pension scheme are increased. And I do think that we've got responsibility for engagement. Simon.
Thank you, Chair. I absolutely agree with what's being said, particularly by Rachel just a few moments ago. What concerns me is we must ensure that we do not conflate opening and reading a document and understanding it.
Absolutely.
Because engagement has to be a two-way street. And I'm very, very concerned that we will say there has been 52% of people receiving this email have opened it and read it. It doesn't mean anything.
No, I completely agree.
Right, and
I completely agree with you, Simon.
For me, is a huge danger that we conflate opening the email and understanding.
Yeah, we won't fall into that, but I suppose it's the first early measure that if people are at least opening it, that's better than before. And then it's a matter of, okay, now you've opened it, how can we make it engaging so that you want to open it next time?
And you'll forgive me, I'm going to pop off now, so, but thank you for everything, and Anton, again, I agree with the format or the talk you talked about. I think it's the right way forward.
The other thing, we've got to be really careful here.
Thanks.
We already, as Rachel will attest, are happy to support employers, and we perhaps need to do a little bit of work to make that clearer to employers. But we are not going to walk into any employer and tell them what to do.
No.
They need to ask us for support. They need to want to do presentations to their staff. It is not our business to tell employers how to engage with their employees. Where they are already members of the fund, clearly we have the ability to reach those people direct, and we will. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't necessarily agree with you on feedback, because frankly, if we were told we only got 20% of the people read the email, what are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
So it's a why track it, because we ain't going to do anything differently.
Well, we might, because we might make our newsletters a bit more interesting.
Yes, but if the point is, if our feedback tells us that only 30% are open, it's not a question of whether it's interesting or not, because they haven't even opened it to find out what it is.
Okay, but I'm not a comms expert, and I don't think anyone on the board is a comms expert, and that's why we need the input from the comms team, somewhere along the line, to help us with engagement. But there we go.
But
That's why comms teams exist.
I'm quite keen that actually, probably more so than most of the newsletters provided, that a newsletter we do encourages the reader, should they read it, to engage with their pension.
Yes,
So
Yes.
I think that is probably more important than what typically else is done. Because also, if we get people to engage with their pension, although in the short term, I'm sure Shirley will swear at me, because it might give rise to more initial communication and a flurry of changes to beneficiaries documentation and things like that. But ultimately, if we get people to engage,
that's
it will actually probably mean less hassle and work for us in the long term.
and better quality data and so on. So every year, there's this pension season that is run nationally. And I think using that as part of our communication strategy. So in our communication strategy, I would like us to piggyback on the other things that are happening in society so that we leverage our communication strategy and use all of the things that are going on in society to help us. Things like the pension dashboard, other things that are going on around pensions, state pensions, defined benefit pensions, using MoneyWise and all of that. Use that within our communication strategy.
That's delivery, not strategy.
Okay, delivery, not strategy. Right, Rachel. Yeah.
Suggestion or just a thought, I think. The annual benefit statements go out in the next few months, and I'm sure Shirley has already got the format, so I apologise, Shirley, but is there maybe an opportunity to send a link for people who receive it online to a short survey that asks them a few pertinent questions on their understanding of their pension, how it links to state pension, I don't know, whatever we want to ask them. And also, to put something on the annual benefit statement for people who aren't part of mental self-service and then therefore won't have an electronic link that they could send back. I don't know, they could engage online even if they don't want to be online for mental self-service. And I don't think, I agree with you, Anton, we need to know what we need to know.
Yeah.
That's just a suggestion.
And
this sentence last.
One of the things that came up at the conference last week was the PSA, retirement living standards, and the thing that shocks people into taking action about pensions in general is the realization that they are not going to have enough money in retirement to live the lifestyle that they have seen other people living on social media, and they think, oh, I'm not going to have the white linen trousers on the Caribbean beach. I'm going to have a cup of soup in my own home, and those sorts of things, including that, why don't you go and have a look at this handy tool that will tell you how much money you're likely to have when you come to retire. Anthony, do you want to speak?
I think Shirley wanted to say something.
Oh, I think Anthony's had that little yellow hand for quite a while, so I'm going to go to Anthony.
No. Shirley was up first, so Shirley
Well,
go first.
okay, thanks, Anthony. You're doing my job well. You can be next chair. Go on, Shirley.
Thank you. I just had a couple different bits, and this may be part of the delivery. So my role within Peninsula is the employer and communications lead. So we're working on some different areas, sort of like improving the website, linking more to the national websites, and making ours more this is what you've got to do to get your benefits from Peninsula and the different processes that both ourselves and the member would need to do. So that's all in place. But with regard to the member engagement and picking up on Rachel's comment about the different employers, it's a slightly different, I think, from what Anton has said. What we've seen some other administrating authorities do is actually hold scheme sort of wide or invite scheme members in general to either be online or be in person at an event that we hold. So a bit like Rachel has done for the Somerset Council employees, this is opening it up to sort of like Somerset Pension Fund members. So we're looking at the ways that we can do that. But it was with either Devon members or whatever, but it would need, we do go out to see certain employers. We do have videos about induction side of things and let people know what they have, like the benefits of the LGPS. And we do try and get that information out via employers. But Anton is right about picking up who's actually reading it. With scheme members reading the information, employers need to read information we send out as well. And the pensions line that we send out, it's about a 30% readership on a good month that we send that out. We can analyse behind it what people are picking out of that pensions line as well. And you know, we've over the years there's been different sort of levels of it, but we're being told for like an e-zine 30% is actually quite a good level of, but it's not picking up, you know, 70% of the employers. So we are looking at ways that we can actually make it better, improve over the pensions line. But if they're not even opening the email that it's attached to, they're not viewing it. They may see it in their preview windows, but we are actually, as we go through this year, trying to talk to as many employers as possible and say you need to read it because it's telling you what to do. We link to the actual September campaign that is put on for scheme members as well through there, and like share like the links to the video. So the first year it was done, it was like Big Sue doing a video about pensions and like a rap. Last year it was Timmy Mallet. Not sure he went down so well. We don't know who it is for this year yet, but we would be part of that campaign as well. So we are trying to get out there more with the scheme members, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say here. And surveys as part of that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Shirley. So I think I'm going to go to Anthony now, and I think you've put in the chat what our terms of reference are.
I have, and I think it's really, I'm really keen to make sure we don't stray from this, in so much as we're not a consumer advocacy group and we're not here to provide advice and guidance to our members. We're here to make sure that the fund is administered properly. So all the things you're proposing, I think, are sensible things generically, but there is ultimately our pension members are adults that need to investigate and look for what's best for them. It's not for us to decide what they should be directed to and informed of. If I just play out a scenario, I'll need Anton to sort of keep me in check here, but let's say every single member of who's an active member at the moment started paying additional voluntary contributions. I'm assuming that would be detrimental rather than positive for the fund itself.
No, they go into a different fund. They go into.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things here is that, to be clear, we can only engage with people who are already members of the fund. We have no ability or jurisdiction to try and increase the membership for those that, because that requires the employer's consent. And if the employer wants to do that, we'll support it, but it needs to be that way around, not the other way around. And the regulations absolutely stipulate what the member puts in and what they get out for that. And other than the 50-50 option, there's broadly no discretion around that whatsoever. So this isn't about, well, cannot be about encouraging greater levels of saving.
No,
Because similarly, other than making people aware that an ABC scheme exists,
yeah,
anything beyond that, I think, would open us up to the possibility of selling, going beyond our.
we can't give advice, yeah.
So I'm very clear in my mind that any comms we do need to be about encouraging people to better understand the LGPS exposure they already have.
Yes,
And
yes.
engage with that in terms of understanding it, making sure that their documentation in terms of address and the beneficiaries options extra are up to date, preferably being brave if you're not IT literate, but being a member of the member self-service, which allows you to engage with that
Yes.
in a much more active and up-to-date way. So those are the things that we need to be encouraging, but it's very much limited to those things and providing information, not comments about the wider world of pensions. Now, hopefully, if they engage with their LGPS pension, they might engage with other parts of their pension if they have them.
And when we get the pensions dashboard, they will be able to see how their pension fits in with their wider retirement income.
Yeah.
So that will drive engagement, yeah. Yeah,
But you do have to be very careful, and there is definitely a line.
yes,
The thing I'm conscious about is whether we put out a state of play about where their pension will take currently. On the basis of information.
No, because that is a member-specific piece of information. We're talking about mass comms. We can encourage them as part of that mass comms to contact the Ministry of Pensions, to go on the member
So
self-service
they can see what they've got.
and see what they've got.
we,
They get their annual benefit statement, they should make the effort to read and check it.
maybe, and this is just a suggestion for you, Shirley, maybe like a webinar on understanding your annual
Yeah.
statement, but there's probably one of those that exists already, is there?
We have sort of like a Q&A on the annual benefit statement and information that goes out with it. And we have tried over a couple of years to do a video going through the annual statement as well. That didn't get very many views, to be honest. However, what is ongoing at the moment, and we're desperately trying to get it in very soon, is the new member self-service portal actually has a personalized video of the annual benefit statement for the members. So it doesn't go through everything, but it says this is what your benefits are, and they like it or they don't like it from there. But it's just a small personalized video to reach out to those that maybe don't want to read all the information that they can get through the actual statement themselves. They can look at the video first for the highlights and then investigate further if they wish to. But we do always encourage them to check things out a bit more. And it also, the new member self-service will have an area where they can do a bit like you're suggesting with the retirement living standards, that the member can put in like what they're wanting out of their retirement, and then it will tell them, well, if you've only got your local government pension, this is what it would be. The average pension for our area is about £4,000 a year, so it's not at even the low standard for what was on the retirement living standards at the PLSA. Obviously, there'd be state pensions attached to that as well. But there is a lot of improvements happening, but I do agree we can give information we're not allowed to advise the
Oh.
member what to do.
Did you want to make a point, Rachel, or no? No. Thanks,
So
yeah,
I just want a general comment really about information about pensions. It might be that 20-30% of people open their emails. I doubt less than 10% of that people who open it actually read it in detail. And when you get an annual pensions benefit statement, most people look at the highlights, but they won't read all the blurb that goes with it. So I think worry too much. Most people don't care about the pension, unfortunately, until
it's too late.
the benefits, they think, oh, I ought to see like I'm gonna get my own time next year. But
Yeah, I know, and it is an uphill struggle because people in, wider society are not engaged with pensions, unfortunately. But I think we've probably done that one to death. So, next item. Which I think was the response to the minister's letter.
Yes, so the last item on the committee's agenda was response to the minister's letter. So I think still the minister technically wrote to all funds in England. Apparently, he decided against engaging away with Wales,
Yes.
which is interesting, but we'll leave that aside. On the 15th of May, it went to the chief exec and section 151 of the council, and it requested a response in no more than 2 pages. That's why the font on the response is quite small, because I needed to get it onto 2 pages, or felt that I should at least try. As you will see from the letter, there are 2 questions that then are subdivided into sort of overall about 5 or 6 questions. As you would expect, I've drafted a response. It went to the committee last week. They encouraged me to tweak 1 sentence, be a little less timid, but otherwise endorse the draft as was. And I'm quite happy to take questions, representations, thoughts, discussions. And I will make the point I made, I suppose 2 points I made at the time. One is that the Scheme Advisory Board Secretariat have advised us to respond, even though the minister who signed it may or may not be the minister, by the 19th of July when responses are requested back. And the other thing is that some of the theme, although not necessarily the specifics, the themes, especially around greater consolidation, are broadly, we understand, cross-party, which again is why we're encouraged to respond, because it's quite likely that irrespective of what party comes in, they might be interested in the answers. But that also makes it, to some extent, not a particularly politically sensitive discussion. If this had been very much a conservative, clearly a very conservative party agenda and not, then I would probably have put the response in private session. We would have discussed it in private session, given the limits on what the council can do in the pre-election period. But because, as I say, maybe not the specifics, but the general thrust is to be cross-party, I felt it therefore somewhat less.
Yeah. Great response. Thank you very much, Anton. I don't have any. It's gone in anyway.
No, I haven't sent it.
You haven't sent it yet?
No.
Okay.
Partly because I need to listen to the recording of the committee members to make the adjustments. I did take,
Yeah, we're very quick after the committee, we normally have a bit of a gap, but
Yeah.
I'm well.
so no, the deadline for responses, I think, I'd have to check later, but I think it's off the top of my head, I think it's the 19th of July. So,
We're with you know, potentially a whole new world, so.
yes, given that ministers for local government don't stick around.
Yeah.
Even if the Conservatives were re-elected.
Yeah.
Somewhat surprised if Simon Moore remained as the Minister for Local Government.
Okay, so I don't think there are any comments, don't seem to be any comments online either, but thank you for writing the response. If anyone does have an urgent need to make some changes,
They can
always call you, email. Perfect. So that's the end of our review of last week's committee meeting. So our next agenda item is our review of the risk register, but I think we probably did that when we were looking at the committee. So unless anyone has any.
I mean, I'll specifically raise.
Yeah.
Because I didn't comment on it.
Okay.
That the adjustments requested at the last board has been made. So that is the only change to the risk register.
Yes.
And
that was about succession planning, wasn't it? And your team.
Yes.
Your team.
Yes, it means specifically was around, I think it's PF 5 or something, admin 5 or something. Yes, PF admin 5, vulnerability to long-term staff sickness and or retention.
Thank you for updating that risk register for us. So then we've got our business plan things. So.
And there's, other than rolling it forward.
Yeah.
I don't think I've added anything to the jungle. Apparently you're having a meeting in jungle next year. Yes,
Yeah.
Apologies for jumbling.
And next meeting, we're going to be electioning a new chair.
Yes.
We're going to be electioning a new chair. So I put my colleagues on notice that in our October meeting, the chair is meant to rotate around board members. I will not always be here. You have to find a new chair at some point. Also, at that point, I suppose we ought to talk about the fact that this is Rachel's last meeting. Congratulations, Rachel.
Thank you.
On your new chapter.
Thank you.
So
On
what?
sponging off the fun.
Well, I'm just very service. I think I'm actually continuing
So what is the process for finding a new board member?
So on the basis that Rachel represents employers,
Yes.
the process will be that I will email employers en masse and ask for nominations. And then if there is more nominations than spots, so if I get 2 nominations,
Yes.
one I might be somewhat encouraged and marginally surprised. But then there would be a vote of said employers.
But is it possible, because we've really benefited from having Rachel's administration experience. Is it possible? I know we're unlikely to be able to pick and choose. But when we put the call out to the employers, could we ask if there was anyone with an administration background in the local government pension scheme, that would be really welcome? Could we approach Rachel's successor?
So I would do it slightly the other way around.
Okay.
So I'm quite happy to put on the email sort of knowledge of pension matters. I mean, I'm not sure I want to, because
Okay.
I want to get
Yes,
I
don't
want
restrict
to
it.
get, I
Yes,
don't want to restrict the pool, and if I
Yes.
say it would be really helpful if we had somebody who had financing and
yeah, you're not gonna
pensions
get,
knowledge, then we.
we might put some people off.
We might put some people off.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, it is a democratic process.
Yes,
Now, if we get no nominations,
yes,
then I might have a word with Rachel and her successor
yes.
in her role and see whether the payroll team of Somerset Council would like to continue to
Support us.
support us. That's assuming that Somerset Council doesn't feed that through as part of its overall process. I have a word with you about that, Rachel.
Okay, okay, but thank you, Rachel. Thank you for having me. Thank you for your assistance. It's been really useful.
So, but with it being an employer, particularly with it being an employer post, where it is a restricted pool, and in theory, we have the ability to contact them all,
Yes,
assuming we have up-to-date email.
I'm assuming they open email,
Oh,
which
well,
we've already heard.
yes.
It's sometimes a task.
And engage with it.
Yes,
Yeah, it is a democratic process. What we'd love is to have 4 differing candidates that bring different things, and the employers to engage and vote en masse.
yeah, yeah,
There was one instance in the past when I was doing the committees that I had to point out to the incumbent that her own employer hadn't actually voted for her re-election. So engagement and getting them to
yeah,
nominate and, if necessary, vote, actually do take the opportunity to express
yeah.
is likely to be an uphill battle, but it's a battle we will take on and
Yes.
see where we get to.
Yes. If a replacement for Rachel is not immediately forthcoming, do we have any problems with choracy or?
Assuming the rest of you turn up, no.
Okay. Yeah, it still has to be in person, but I think, Debbie, you were talking about maybe a change of venue in the future.
It's not maybe, it is going to happen.
Okay.
And they've chosen Bridgewater unless the committee and the board would prefer Shepton Mallet or any other one. If you do, you need to let me know. And if I've got the permission, I can change it.
So the committee services line is that we are hipping.
So Mallet's so much closer.
Are you happy with that, Anton? Because 2 people on the committee and the board have suggested Shepton Mallet. Which one suits everybody is what.
I don't mind. I mean, it's an hour and a half for me. Either Bridgewater or.
What the other bench?
I should take the 5th, really, because I'm an officer and I'm here to support. So whilst I have a personal preference based on my personal
What
mileage,
is your personal preference? Because I do need to get your say so.
my personal preference is always going to be as close to Taunton as is possible.
And that would be Bridgewater, right?
Yeah.
Well, seeing as we have offices in Taunton,
Yeah.
I'm still slightly.
I use public transport, so, you know.
Right, okay.
That is a problem with Shepton Mallet, I must admit.
Yeah.
It's Castle Carry Station is a half-an-hour drive, you'd have to get a taxi.
So I'm thinking it's going to be Bridgewater. That's our choice, isn't it? Bridgewater, Shepton Mallet. Legislation means that we have to be in person.
And
This office is being rented out. We only have the use of it on Mondays, Tuesdays and Wednesday mornings.
So-
It's the hall being rented out, but County Hall still.
No, County Hall is being closed for public meetings end of,
Is it gonna open again?
no. Council staff can work in the offices, but for any public meetings, we are not allowed to have any meetings there.
You'd all be welcome at Primtown Hall.
Well, I don't know if they would mind a smaller venue like that. I think, but would that be a cost, Anne, to the council?
We could talk nicely.
I think it's important that we don't have everything in Taunton. I mean, Bridgewater or Shepton, no. pretty equidistant, but I think Bridgewater is a fair choice, and I think it's good that we go around the district, the county.
Oh, you can keep moving. They want to keep it.
Necessarily, but we have various boards and committees at different parts of the county.
And as I say, you asked my preference, I have a preference because I don't spend a lot in the car, but I'm an officer and I will do
Bridgewater's
what
not too.
Yeah, me too.
And certainly Bridgewater's better from a public transport point of
Yes.
view than Mallet.
Yes.
Broome does have a train station.
The youngest line being put in, change.
No, you're always in the equation because we do have an office there. It's just not been suggested it until today.
Yeovil, Bridgewater.
I think Bridgewater is the decision.
It sounds like it's Bridgewater. We won't ask Rachel, she'll sit far. I think therefore Bridgewater.
That's where the next meeting will be there in October.
You'll have to let me know where and
Yes, no, it will be on the agenda.
It'll be the council office in whichever square it is. I can't remember.
okay. I shall look forward to seeing you there in October.
And I believe there is
There's a nice Georgian square.
yes, I believe there's a public car park to the rear.
There is, but you've got to get there early because it gets filled up.
Okay. Okay, fine. Any other things that we want to add to our business plan?
Well, no, the only thing I wanted to add is this is about our training again, or whether we can, the only aspect of it, so as it's come out today in the meeting today, when we do have a training session, we have some loss with each other, just to do some of us who are perhaps maybe not fully informed as others in relation to investments, but purely a sort of a guideline, some of these things as to terms. It does need to be long drawn out, and just
I think,
I'll try and bear it. I mean, I don't, for training events, I don't tend to do written documents.
we'll just have them turbine or something.
and I think it's incumbent on all of us, if there is something that comes up that we don't understand, I think we have to be honest about it and admit to our ignorance, because that's the only way we're going to learn. Gosh, that sounded very Somerset, didn't that? So please ask, if there's something that comes up and you think, I don't know what anyone's talking about, please ask.
I don't think it needs to be long drawn out, just a sort of a snapshot, if you like.
Yeah, we'll always try and explain terms. But please, if there's anything that you think, I don't understand that, either after the meeting or during the meeting, just please ask. Right, next item on our agenda is which agenda am I looking at? Review of the pension fund cybersecurity, and I think we've covered that, have we not?
Yes. Yes, I mean.
Yeah, we're gonna have an
let's go.
offline meeting.
Yes, stroke training event.
Brilliant, brilliant. I don't have any other items of urgent business. Does anyone else want to raise anything, ask any question?
Nigel wishes to.
Nigel?
Yeah, well, it's not really about the board per se, but I noticed there's a vacancy on the committee, put Sarah Payne back in the sheet. What has happened with that vacancy?
So that vacancy historically has been for Unison. I've lost count of the immense number of times I've asked Unison for a representative, and they keep promising me one and then disappearing, and I need to re-engage with them.
Something that came,
Okay, but there's three recognised trade meetings, so
Yeah.
you should email all three of them.
Well, historically and under the terms, it goes to rep Unison, but if Unison continue to not engage, then we'll go back.
something that came up at the conference was, why is there a closed shop and why do you have to be a union member?
Well, so we have a representative of membership.
Yes.
That's the title. Now, bearing in mind that that person
should have the means to engage the wider membership and get feedback from them. It is fair to say that the unions should be in a better position to do that.
But if they're not interested enough to even put up a representative for the committee.
I
how
think
are they going
Nigel
to
was
be?
indicating that a different union might be.
Yes,
If you remember when the board was first created, Unison worked, we worked with Unison and they had a person on it, and then they. on the board.
So we should have, under the terms of reference, we should have 2 union representatives and a wider member representative on the board. But the unions failed to take that spot up as well when I've got a feeling it was a Unison rep, wasn't it? Yeah, I'm trying to get, and we had a Unison rep to start with, and when they retired personally or left local government work personally,
Mendon District Council.
yes, I
Yeah.
think it was.
Yeah.
Again, complete absence to put someone up. And so when we then refreshed the board and needed a fresh member rep as well, I took the opportunity to go, well, they're not putting someone up,
yes.
I'll fill the place.
Well, I think let's try, and if the vacancy maintains, why don't we ask Peninsula to go out to the membership? Are we allowed to?
I think the ordinance says
I
anything for
I
us.
think, yeah, I think the unions have to specifically say they don't want it.
Okay. Well, why don't
Bearing
we
in
ask,
mind-
say, if you don't want it, we will go out to the wider membership, and that might spur them into action.
But let's be clear. Whilst the board can have an opinion,
Yes,
that is outside the alternative reference.
okay, right,
That is the administrating authority's responsibility to
Okay.
do its own, especially in that specific context of a formal committee of the decision-making committee
just
of
be
the
that something
administrating
that,
authority.
something that came up at the committee, at the conference.
I mean, I get it in the context that union representation, or sorry, union membership amongst the membership of the LGPS is low, is my understanding. I've never seen any statistics. I don't think you could probably get statistics. There'd be statistics of how much of the council's workforce is unionised, I suspect somewhere.
No, there isn't.
Not held within the council, clearly.
Because it's that, we know how many people contribute through their pay, but we have no idea how many people contribute
Yeah.
away from them personally,
Right,
through their bank account, and I've got no concept of that, so, no.
But I think I think the unions would recognise that the proportion is quite low
In some sense.
in Somerset. Yes. Sorry, I shouldn't have made that distinction.
Okay, I think that brings us to the end of our meeting, so I will declare the meeting closed at 12 inside the 2 hours. Yes. See you all in October in Bridgewater. Thank you, good meeting, enjoy it.